Yeah, let's bring in right now Senate Majority Whip Dick Durbin of Illinois. He's chairman of the Judiciary Committee. You know, we're always talking about double standards here. I served with a member of Congress who went to Ireland on a golfing trip with a lobbyist, came back, later said something bland. I forget exactly what he said on the House floor, but nothing that, mind you, made any newspaper reports, and he ended up in jail. Here you've got a Supreme Court justice who flies to Alaska, gets $100,000, comes back, and he votes on a case, at least one case. I think this Argentina case. I'd be shocked if he didn't know that Paul Singer was involved in that Argentina case. And even though it was a 7-1 vote, at the very least, if you don't recuse yourself, shouldn't we have basic ethical guidelines at the Supreme Court that makes these justices, left and right, disclose those financial entanglements?
Well, Joe, of course we should. And I think Mika's summary of the situation was complete, but for one fact. That one ruling by the Supreme Court in Paul Singer's favor was worth $2.4 billion to his company. We're not talking about minor rulings on issues that are irrelevant. This is substantial. Here's the bottom line as far as I see it. The disclosures about Justice Alito strangely or sadly parallel the same disclosures about Justice Thomas. It appears that there is a feeling in the Supreme Court that it's none of our business. The public doesn't need to know when these conflicts of interest occur. And the justices don't need to recuse themselves from critical decisions that are worth billions of dollars from the people who are befriending them on their vacations. That's got to come to an end. And there's one person who could end it before the sun sets today, and that's Chief Justice John Roberts. It's time for him to step up and announce there will be a code of ethics for the Supreme Court, and the disclosure laws will apply, and that they'll follow at least the same rules as every other federal judge in America. Not doing so is really at the expense of the reputation of the court.
Yeah, and though I've never been voting with John Roberts, I will say he's an institutionalist who has at times fiercely tried to protect the reputation of the court. So you would think he would do that. I do wonder, Senator, how much power do you have? What is your jurisdiction in the United States Congress to pass that sort of code of ethics? People don't understand it, but, you know, the Supreme Court didn't used to be as powerful as it is. In fact, it used to sit in the basement of the Capitol.
Well, I can just tell you this, Joe. We passed a law last year about disclosure of stock ownership, and the justices of the court assumed that it applied to them, and they were going to comply with it. We found too many cases where federal judges were ruling on matters about corporations that they owned stock in. That had to come to an end, and they accepted the law that we passed last year as a standard that they would live by as well. The same thing is true about the ethics law that we passed several decades ago. They nominally are following it, but in the cases of Alito and Thomas, they failed to disclose the very basic things. Joe, you and I know, having served in Congress, what the rules are in terms of gifts that you can accept and whether you have to go to the Ethics Committee for approval and what you have to disclose each year annually on your financial disclosure. At a minimum, the Supreme Court justices ought to be held to that same standard.
Yeah, let's talk about the shameful display yesterday of John Durham in the House, in Congress before a committee, pretending that he didn't know about activities that actually Marco Rubio's Intel committee, when he was running the Intel committee in the Senate, said posed a grave risk to U.S. counterintelligence. Claimed he didn't know anything about that he didn't know anything about cutouts, Russian cutouts like WikiLeaks that were releasing leaked Hillary Clinton emails, that he didn't have any information about Donald Trump in a press conference asking the Russians to search for those emails, claimed that, quote, he didn't follow the news much. I mean, what do we say about a once respected prosecutor who's just basically started engaging in the worst, just the worst strain of Trumpism?
This muddled chapter in American history did not reflect well on him are those who were around him. We know what was going on because it was disclosed and publicized across the nation. The Russians were doing their best to influence the election. The involvement of former President Trump, of course, is an issue that is separate but important. But those who are trying to cover up this chapter in history are not doing the nation a good service.
Yeah, can I ask you your response to the person who was sent to jail for 4 years? For storing secrets, national secrets, in her bathroom. A secret certainly not as dangerous.
Not as sensitive.
Not as sensitive as those that Donald Trump were. Are we going to see equal justice under the law? Not just for minor, not just for average Americans, but also for ex-presidents?
Joe, that's an important point you're making here, because this is just not a piece of paper that has some words stamped on it. Behind these pieces of paper are people who are risking their lives for America. Behind these pieces of paper are our troops who are depending on us to keep these secrets so that they'll be safe defending this country. It isn't just a minor paperwork offense. It goes way deeper than that. And the sentencing that you're mentioning, I was thinking just a few weeks ago, the same thing was true. A person faced a sentence of almost 11 years for the same type of activity. So we ought to take this seriously. We ought to let the process of the court proceed. Politicians ought to keep their noses out of it at both parties and let this finish in the appropriate judicial way.
Chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Democratic Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois, thank you very much for coming on the show this morning. We appreciate it.